Okay, hello, hi,
Okay.
Koichi Sensei. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk to everybody about, my life and my life with Konkokyo and how it has helped me and my parents and my grandparents and all the people who helped to shape me. There is an American saying that says, it takes a village to raise a child. That means the whole village has to help to raise this one child. It's not only the parents, but other people as well. And I think in my case, that was so true because, I was the youngest born. And so my parents were older and they were so busy. So, I had to do a lot of things on my own. And that helped me so much. So I'm so grateful for this opportunity to talk to you about it. Okay? So, first of all, hi, I'm Wanda Tamashiro, and today I would like to tell you about my parents' life, first of all, before Konkokyo. This is what, and I wasn't even born then, but this is what their life was like before they became Konkokyo believers. Okay, all was not good with my family because they were living during the Depression. And my parents, Ichiro Totori and Tsuruko Yabuki, they were married in 1931, just during the Depression. And the first home they had was in Mililani. When you go to Mililani Mortuary, there's this dirt road. It was dirt road, now it's paved. And they got married in January, so it was so rainy and muddy and everything, but they went, there's a side road that says Waiao Correctional Center. Have you ever seen that when you go to Mililani? Well, anyway, you go up this side road on the mountain, and there my grandfather had a dairy farm, and my mother and father were supposed to, that was their first job, to milk the cows and bring milk to the schools. And there my mother had two children, my sister Jane within 1 year, and then Toshigo, two children. So she couldn't take care of two of them and work at the farm. So my grandparents took my older sister and raised her to about 10 years old. And but they had to quit the dairy because all of a sudden they were told, hey, you can't sell that milk, you got to pasteurize the milk.
Oh.
That new kikai they don't have, yeah? So my grandfather bought, he went to town and he bought this nice iremono. He thought, okay, he's going to use it to boil the milk. They're going to cook the milk to kill the baikin.
Oh, I see.
But when the Board of Health man came and saw those containers, he said, you cannot use that because that is called a chamber pot. That means many rich people use that for toilet, to container. But he didn't know that, but he thought it was okay. So anyway, their first business closed. And then my parents decided, they're going to move into downtown Honolulu because no jobs, in the country. So they moved to Sheridan Street, right by Sheridan Street. That's in town, Honolulu. And my father became a salesman, a shoteng salesman. And, even though they were very poor, they had fun together, my parents, My mother said every night they jankenpo, who has to go buy ice cream because they had a Dairyman's ice cream factory. And my mother said, my father didn't know how to jankenpo, so he always lost.
Oh, yeah.
And, she said, but, okay, the life was going on. They had two boys at that time. But one day they were crossing, my mother was taking the two boys, age 5 and 3, across Kalakaua Avenue. Then when she was looking at the younger boy, the older boy stepped into the street and he got killed by a truck. This truck came by. My mother was so, she said, she was so distraught and they were so devastated that, cannot get over that, feeling of losing your child.
Yes.
So then they moved back, they decided to go back to the country, so they moved to Wahiawa. And they moved into this old plantation town and they were able to get a bungalow, small house, 2-room house for $7 a month. And when they lived there, my father was supposed to raise vegetables and sell. And my mother, she was always a really kind, compassionate person. and she loved kids. So she would cook for everybody in the neighborhood. She would make them daikon rice, you know, cheap things, and pancake, you know, like a cake, but she would make it like a fat pancake. And if it's your birthday, she makes special by putting peanuts on top, you know. But that's the kind of life they had. And I remember, I don't know if you remember, there was a mayor, Mayor Foss. Oh, I shouldn't tell their names, but when she made a cookbook in Waipahu, and she wrote something about coming to my mother's house when she was a kid, and my mother would make for them musubi and eat chorizo, make chorizo. So my mother was known to do that, okay? But even if the family could enjoy life, the family was so poor, you know, they didn't have good income. So they decided to move back to Waipahu. And when they did, they bought this old Chinese house, you know, because the Chinese people came first. So they moved out, and then their old abandoned houses, my dad bought, you know, one of them. And his luck was not good, you know, they were real poor all this time and having so much hardship, you know. So my grandmother in Waipahu told my father, why don't you go to Konkokyo, you know, omairi shinasai, she told him. So he went to where Sonoda Okusan was, and he started praying to Konkokyo. And when Sonoda Sensei came back from internment camp, this is the war ga owatte, you know, he came back, he and my mother decided, because Sonoda Sensei did not have a church or house, you know, because after when the war started, everything was taken away. So my dad and mom said, yes, you can come to our house. And this is not a good house, you know, a very poor house. Because my mother said the ceiling was so terrible. They had to put sheets, you know, bed sheet to cover the ceiling. And do you know what my mother and father did? My mother agreed to let Sonoda Sensei and Okusan live upstairs, you know, in the better part of the house. And my dad and mom moved our family of about 5 people under the house, not downstairs, but under the house, because there's no floor. So my father built a floor, you know, wooden floor. And on that, they lived. And my sister, I don't remember because I wasn't born or I was a baby. And my sister and my mother told me once that when the rain came, the water would come just to 1 inch below the floorboard, you know. And but that's where they lived, under the house. And the kitchen was dirt floor. Then 1 year later, about a year later, the members of the church, Konko Mission of Waipahu, the men, and my dad, you know, the war is over. So they were able to buy 2 buildings, you know, surplus army barracks for cheap. And they brought those 2 buildings behind the present time supermarket in Waipahu, in the Ushiro. They had leased land. And they built this nice church, you know, a house, a parsonage, and the church. And of course, we got to live there with the Sonodas because they were living with us. And so I don't know why, but when I was about 2 years old, I was living there. I remember this, you know, that I ran away from my mother and I was running outside. And of course, those days we played harashi. So my feet were so dirty. And I went, bitta, bitta. I remember running up the front stairs of the church, run into the you know, the ohiromai. And quickly I was praying, you know, and my dirty feet were sticking out. And I saw Sonoda Okusan and my mother running, you know, from the other side to catch me. But they couldn't do anything because I was already praying. So, you know, that taught me in a way that Kami-sama would always protect me. You know, that's what I learned when I was 2 years old. Okay. Now, so that was the beginning of Konkokyo for our family, okay? And then one day my dad said he didn't get along with his father, you know, Kakuichi. And so one day he was driving Kodama Sensei home from Waipahu. And Kodama Sensei said, oh, you have to get along with your father because the father is the head and the children are just like the body. So you got to work together, you know. So my dad thought about that, and then Then in 1946, his father got sick, my grandfather, because he had diabetes. And he had to cut off his leg because he had gangrene. Now, my Oji-san was a very good businessman. So he had 2 businesses in Kalihi, and he couldn't take care of it anymore. So he told my dad to please come back, to Kalihi and live with him, because now he was a widower, he lived by. So our family decided to go help him, and my dad took care of my Oji-san and the poi factory. And next door to this poi factory, my grandfather had a juice factory, but that went to the neighbor Kurihara boys who used to help my grandfather. And my grandfather was such a good businessman. Those 2 businesses are now Taro Brand, HPC Foods, and next door, the Isles of Gold, that was my grandfather's juice factory, became Hawaiian Sun. So 2 good businesses. My grandfather was kind of a good businessman. And we moved into a luxurious big house in Kalihi. It was very big compared to what, my parents were living in. They had 3 bedrooms, bathroom, a long hallway, big kitchen, big living room. And then we had 2 stories, so there was stone steps in the front with all the ivy growing. And downstairs was really downstairs. Another family lived downstairs. And we lived upstairs. And so we were very lucky because that was free for us, right? Because my grandfather's house and then the poi shop, they didn't have to pay, but they had to start working, there. So anyway, then when they were living at that house, my parents had to take over the poi factory. I was about 3 years old, 4 years old, and I used to sleep with my parents. And one day, one of the workers, this Filipino driver, and at that time they had competition. Now they have only 1 big poi factory and maybe some other small ones now. But at that time there were about 5 or 6 competitors. So the driver salesman, this Filipino man, told my parents, hey, you gotta work 7 days a week or else somebody's gonna taste the other people's poi. So my mother and father agreed, They said, okay, we will work 7 days a week. And they made, so, and I knew every night at 12 o'clock they got up, they went to the factory because I used to sleep with them. And then when I woke up, they're not there already. So they did that for years because they wanted to establish our poi factory and get a good reputation for the factory. And that is what they did. Okay, and okay. And when I went to kindergarten, my mother was so busy working, right? I was 5 years old. I don't know, my mother didn't know how I went to school because I dressed myself because I had to be a little bit independent because she's so busy. And she tanomu this girl in the neighborhood, 6th grade, to take me to school because I have to cross this big highway. But you know what happened? After 1 month, that girl, she was so smart. They made her skip 6th grade. She went to a new school, Kalakaua, because she was so smart. She's going from 6th to 7th. And I'm only kindergarten. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, so I didn't tell my mother anything because she's so busy. So then I started to go to school by myself or just follow everybody. And I was still 5. And then, but it made me more resourceful. You got to think what to do. And so I know there was another girl in my class who lived near my house, and she would walk with me to the 6th grade class. But she had a brother, older brother. And I had Elaine, that I would go home with. But now I don't have Elaine, but I still go with her to the 6th grade. And the brother now takes me home, but he doesn't know that another girl is following him home. That was me. But that's what I did. And when she would stay home, it was kind of hard because I cannot go to him and say, can you take me home? Because he doesn't know me, right? So anyway, those were kind of stressful times, but that's how I grew up, with my in Kalihi. And the poi factory was so much a part of our lives in Kalihi. Everybody knew about our poi factory because we had a big house and, So all the teachers in my school, they used to call me the poi shop girl or poi daughter. And I said, I don't know if I smell like poi or what, because if, you know, every day. But it was because I had this older sister. My sister was already in college. You know, if you look at our family picture, she's the oldest, and she looks like my mother. She could be my mother, you know, and I was only like in elementary school. But she, when I was 5 years old, she enrolled me in Academy of Arts art school, 5 years old. I think I was the only kid in Kalihi, because everybody else was ordinary family, poor families, not rich families, you know, in Kalihi. So, but I got to go because my sister, you know, she was already going to college, you know. And because now that we're the businessman's daughters, you know, that time in the 50s, the businessmen were, small businessmen were improving, you know, so they were becoming richer. So my sister could get credit card to Liberty House, and me too. You know, in high school, I had a credit card. And then my sister used to buy me all these nice clothes from these expensive stores, and I would wear them to school. So everybody thought, oh, wow, you know, the teachers noticed that I was dressed like that. And so they treated me a little bit special, yeah, I guess. But I didn't notice that. And anyway, so it was thanks to my sister who helped me. Then when I went to intermediate school, I started to run for office, you know, for student class president from 7th grade. And I went from this small school. And you would think, now why would I run? Because by the time I was 6th grade or 7th grade, my older brother got married, and my sister-in-law Miriam came to live with us. And she used to help me with my speeches and, you know, nobody had that kind of help, yeah? So I was helped like that so I could run for office. And I did for 3 years. And then when I moved to Farrington High School, a very big high school, I ran too, you know, because I came from the biggest intermediate school. So more people knew me, so I won. And then when I was a senior, I became student body vice president. And that was so lucky for me because I had the chance to represent my high school and go with this, the student body president of McKinley, the second biggest high school. And that person turned out to be my present husband, John Tamashiro. You know, and if I didn't meet him that time, maybe I never would have married him. So it was just like sashimuke for us, you know. Yeah, and that's how I knew him. I got to know him. And let's see. Oh shucks, I'm going back and forth, but anyway, I forgot to tell you about my family in Kalihi when I was still growing up. I'm sorry, I'm going back, but there was a family that lived downstairs, and the Ishikawa family, and this man worked for our poi factory, and he lost his hand, you know, in the grinding, you know, when he was grinding the poi. But he never sued us or anything, you know, the poi shop. And his family, they took me in like their child, you know, because my brothers and sisters so old, you know, and I was close to his children's age. So he took me wherever they went, you know, so I was so lucky. Like I got to go see the Christmas lights with them because my brother folks are so old, they don't want to see those things. And they treated me like their own child. So I went with them to visit all their relatives all over the island. And I learned, everybody would say, oh, who is that girl, you know? So then I started to talk and get to know people. So that was really good for me. Okay, and then I should have followed this. Okay, I'm so sorry. But one day, somebody, you know, and people thought we were rich because we had a big house. And so people in the community came to borrow money from my mom, you know, and so she would let them have some money. But she said, oh, you cannot let them have too much because they cannot pay back, you know. So, but she would lend them. My mother was really nice and compassionate. She would help people who had trouble. And so one day somebody came to my house and they saw the kamidana and they saw the yatsunami.
Yes.
And it says Kane, right? The character for Kane right in the middle. And somebody said, oh, no wonder they're rich. They're praying to the money god. You know, that's what people thought, you know. But my mother told me, no, we're not rich. You know, sometimes we can be, you know, it's good. Times are good, but sometimes times get bad. So you have to prepare for that, she told me. And my mother set me straight. You know, she helped me to think like that. And my parents, I never thought they were rich because their friends who were businessmen too, they drove nice Cadillacs and they lived in Diamond Head, you know, nice homes. But we still live in Kalihi and we didn't drive any nice cars, you know, and my mother and father they were more frugal, you know, they didn't show off, you know, their wealth. So that's why I didn't think we were too rich. And, but I'm grateful that they did that because then now I am frugal. I drive a junk car. You know, for 20 years I would drive my car as long as it moves, and I don't care, and my husband doesn't care too. And you know, doing those things, you know, trying to be frugal kind of helped us, you know, to save money, because we didn't have very much money too, because I didn't have the poi business, but my parents did help us. You know, they gave us down payment for our homes, which was really a big help, you know. But even then, we're still poor. You know, we're living paycheck to paycheck. But I'm grateful to them. But they could do that because they had the business, yeah, the poi factory. So I'm grateful to that, you know, the poi shop too. And, okay. So sorry, okay, then. And when I was little too, I really had so many opportunities to go out, because I went every summer. My mother would let me go spend 50 cents, go to Waipahu, and I would go and pray at the Konko mission. And I had friends in Waipahu. My grandmother and auntie lived, and I made friends who lived in the camp, you know, and I went to bond dances and stuff like that. So, you know, it kind of like opened my horizons, you know, and I didn't only have my neighbor friends, but, you know, people all over, and it made me more outgoing. And then, you know, when I was 11 years old, now I would never let my own children do that. But I used to catch the bus. My mother would give me $50, and she told me, can you go buy 8 Christmas presents for this, you know, about 8 children or 10 children? And so I take the $50, I go shopping, and then I would buy like 8 or 10 presents with that $50. And I come home on the bus carrying all these presents. And I was only 11, but you know, my mother allowed me to, she trusted me, you know, that it made me try to budget and how to figure out how to use the money and what kind of choices. So I really learned a lot from those experiences. And then also I was able to go to Japanese school because I was born after the war. Like my brothers and sisters, they were before the war, so no Japanese school for them. And when I went to Japanese school, I really learned to speak Japanese, you know, standard Japanese. And I was lucky because at home, my mother and father spoke Japanese, you know, and they had visitors. You know, we had a lady who came and she would iron our clothes, you know, so I didn't do any of those things, you know, I was kind of spoiled. And anyway, I went, but I could talk to them because they would come into my house and stay with us, and you know. And then when I go to Konkokyo, I had Sonoda's Okusang and Sensei, and I spoke to them in Japanese, and also the members were older and they spoke Japanese. And my parents were like church leaders, so everybody treated me real, you know, nicely, and I talked to them. I was comfortable with everybody, you know, these older people. And as I told you, my mom was older, yeah, than most parents, because she had me like, when she was 36, you know, which was quite old. You know, my sister was 14 when my mother had me in high school. So everybody used to tell, and I called her Okasan, because, and all the other, my classmates calling their mommy and daddy, and they were all young, you know, compared to my parents. So everybody would ask me, Wanda, is that your grandma? about my mom. So I was so ashamed and embarrassed. So I told my mother, "Kasan, don't come to school, okay?" I told her. Then when I went to 8th grade, I had this teacher who was so terrific. He would put on these huge productions at our school, intermediate school. And then one day he told me, "Wanda, last night I met your mother. She is the nicest mother I ever met." He told me that. Oh, I felt so good. I told her, "Okasan, you can come to school now." I gave her permission. And my mother was such a terrific mother when I think about it, because when I was little, I was kind of spoiled, and I would habuteru at home and then go to school. I'm really good, And so she would read me, she was so busy, but she would read me books about this girl called Two Carolines. At home she was bad, but in school she was good. And when she's reading me the story, I'm thinking, right? And she goes like this, "Oh, I wonder if in this world they have that kind of people, yeah? Kind of two-faced, not so good at home, but good in school, yeah? Must be somewhere in this world they have that kind of people. Not over here, like me, But I would be there." And she was smart because she never said, "Oh, that sounds like you," But it made me realize that, oh yeah, it sounds very familiar, So then you kind of change your ways, you try to correct yourself. So in that way, my mother was a very smart lady, And anyway, okay. Then getting back to Waipahu Church, okay. When I was going there, I was in college already. Sonoda Oksan talked to me, and then we had some children coming to the service. And Sonoda Oksan asked me if I would teach Sunday school, and I didn't know how to do that, but I worked with her. And I wanted to be a teacher. So I said, okay. So I started a Sunday school. And my nephews and nieces came, and even Glenn Yabuki and Elaine, they were younger than me, so they came. And then another family, church family, brought their children, so I had that Sunday school. And then when Kawahatsu Sensei came, we started the bazaars. And those bazaars were so successful because everybody was talented, they could make things and cook things, and and I told my mother, I'm not so good in anything. I can't make, blankets like Karen and, the other people could. So my mom said, "Oh, we need somebody to, tataku their oshiri and get everybody going and hustling everybody along." And I was a class officer, so I said, "I can do that." So that's what I did. I would go get whatever they needed. I would hustle and call up the places and go pick it up. And then, but I had a partner, Karen Taniguchi. We were high school classmates, and we worked in student government together. And so she and we just call each other up and we plan the whole thing, and we would, "Oh, you do this, you do that. Okay, and that's how we did it. So it was so helpful, that Karen was there too. And then my mother was a believer that every person has something Kami-sama has, given you. She said, one day she saw John, my husband, she thought he's so perfect, nice man. He's fixing the pipes, fixing the toilet seat, and he wasn't good at those things. And my mother said, "Oh, Kami-sama did not give one person everything." She thought he had everything. But she told me that, and that's true. Everybody has some gift that you can't do, but they might be able to do. So that's what she told me, and I listened to her, and I did that. Okay. Now, when we were doing our 50th anniversary at the church, my dad, he was a big supporter, and he loves Sonoda Sensei. So he told me he's going to spend $10,000 to build a zoo, the bus, the head of Sonoda Sensei. And I thought about that. I said, "No, Oto-san, don't do that." I argued with him. I said, because that bus is only going to collect bird droppings, and then we're going to have to clean it up, later on. So I said, instead of that, I said, why don't we save the money, the $10,000, and invest it and make a Sonoda fund, so that we can use that money later on, maybe buy a van or something, whatever. And then I said, I don't know how this idea came to me, but I think Kami-sama gave me this idea. We had a social hall next door. Didn't have a name. So I said, why don't we name that Sonoda Hall? Because when we have onorai, we go down there to eat. We have kendo, shiatsu, but no name for that building. So I said, we're going to call it Sonoda Hall. I had a nice plaque made, and then we got their picture and another plaque that explained, that this hall is dedicated to the Sonodas. And that happened because my father agreed with me. I mean, he let me do my idea, So I was so grateful to him because he was not, like samurai and say, my idea is better. He listened to me. And so I was grateful to him. So in future years, when I was about 50, what time is it? So long already, yeah?
30 minutes.
Oh, how many minutes? 30.
30-ish.
30, okay. When I was, in my 50s, and I was teaching, my parents were older, and I'm the youngest, so naturally I had to take care of them, because my brother was still running the poi factory, and my older sister is like, very old. She lives in town, and she didn't drive, so it fell on me to take care of them. And so at first I was going after school every day, and cook dinner for them. And then, but I told my son to move in with them because my parents were two old people living in Waipahu. Every morning they do the same thing, go to Almighty. So they were always robbed. People knew around the neighborhood, not a good neighborhood. So they would come and steal money from them because they always had money, because they cannot go to the bank all the time. So my son moved in, and that robbing stopped. Nobody came because they saw a young man, strong young man. So that was good. So I told my son, live over there, with them. And then he got married and brought his, and that was so good because then I don't have to sleep at their house. At night I could leave them because my son was there. So I was so grateful. We did this for 14 years, and I was thinking, wow, how am I going to do that? I'm teaching, but the blessing was because they moved to Waipahu across from Konkokyo. This neighbor, Shinja-san, Mrs. Shimai, who lived in the neighborhood, said she'll come and stay with them when I go to school, because Reed went to work, my son went to work, and she stayed with them. So I paid her to stay with them, and she would cook lunch and breakfast for them. And then later, Mrs. Ishii came by, and it was just like a social hall. Then Mrs. Yasutake Mitsuko Sensei would come, and even Yano Sensei, Reiko Sensei came because she was a nurse before. So once a week she would come, and I told her, I can't pay you, but I'll also donate money to Wahewa Church. So that was okay. That was an agreement we had. So it was good for her and good for us. And then I met these angels, I call them. One of the girls was Angel. She was a student nurse, and she told me she was working at this nursing home she had to take care of 12 people or 20 people at night, graveyard shift. I told her, how about if you take care of one lady, because she lives in Waipahu. She had to go all the way to Diamond Head side, and she was a student. So I said, at night you take care of her, I pay you the same amount that you're getting, and then you only take care of one lady, and then you can study when she sleeps, So, she agreed to that because right near her house. So that helped her. And then other girls came. I don't know how they came, how they found us, but they came, these 3 girls. And so they took turns taking care of my mother. So then, because then later on my mother needed more help, And I was really heavy and overweight that time because I had so much stress. And then I was teaching. But do you know, Kami-sama helped me at school? Because all of a sudden I had these 2 grandmas or 3 grandmas who brought their grandchildren to school, and all the mothers were working, the fathers and mothers, but these grandmas were available. And they told me, you need help. So I said, oh, okay. So one grandma came. Did you know she stayed for 12 years? She came every day almost, except when she went to Las Vegas. And she would help the children. She'd help me. So, we have to copy papers, worksheets for the children. She did all that. And she helped my whole grade level because she stayed almost the whole day, And after her, another grandma came and she stayed for 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And everybody said, how come she didn't go up with the grandchild, to the next grade?
Mm-hmm.
But when she went to the 2nd grade, the 2nd grade teacher said, no, I don't need your help. So she came back to me and said, do you need help? I said, sure. So she came in and she just stayed for 12 years. And she really, really, like I had a personal secretary, So I didn't know how to use the copy machine, And they would not only do that, but collect all my homework and check it in my book. And then the children who don't do their homework put their names on the board. Saves me time, all this clerical stuff. Collect money, they do all that. And when we have artwork, they'll do all the preparation, everything. So I was so lucky, because I had the stress of my mother folks after school, and then still I have to teach, So that really saved me. And then my principal came to see me and she said, hey, how do you get all these people to help you, And they were all old people. And then now that I think about it, it was because of Konkokyo and how I was raised. There were always old people around me, And that helped me so much. And so I knew how to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my cousin Glenn Yabuki also benefited from that because he was raised by my obasan. And so he knew how to, and go to Konkokyo too, so he knew how to work with old people. And I think that many of his clients were older people and they just loved him, So I think that was part of our gift from Kami-sama, I really believe that. And then after, living with my mother-in-law, she was another person that I really appreciated because now, she was a good seamstress. She could sew well. And she always wanted a daughter. Mm-hmm. So I became her daughter. She made me about hundreds of clothes, so I stopped sewing. I used to sew. And then when we had bazaars, she would make dish towels, hundreds of them, so I could sell it at the bazaar. And she'd make sengiri dye. She always helped me like that. And she was very good at making leis.
Mm-hmm.
So she made pikaki lei. And one of the pictures, I'm wearing a cigar flower lei. And she made the dress for me and the lei. So I was so fortunate. I didn't have to buy so many clothes. And that's how we could save money,
Mm-hmm.
So now we can give to our children. We could help. Well, and she gave me her house, so now my son and my daughter-in-law and my grandchildren live there. And downstairs, my brother-in-law lives, and they don't have to pay rent,
Mm-hmm.
And my older boy, because he lived with my mother for 14 years and he took care of them, I gave him their house that I inherited.
Mm-hmm.
And so, then they could live in Hawaii because otherwise,
Yes.
the young people have to go away because
Mm-hmm.
they can't afford to live here. So that is one of the legacies, and we're so fortunate, that we got those things. And then, so by the time Jill, our youngest, we could help her pay for her condominium because we only had to help her. And so I'm so grateful for all these things and my mother-in-law and everybody. And that's why I said there's so many people who helped, and that is why I feel that phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, is so true in my case too. So thank you so much for listening, everybody. I'm sorry I rambled on and on, but thank you. But I have been blessed, and I hope you all will be blessed too. Oh, one more thing, even though my life was like that, at the end, of my life. You know, we did have hardships, and we do have hardships in life. Everybody does. Like when we had John found out that he had cancer at the end. You know, my children, well, they're not Konkokyo believers, but they're Christians. They all came to support us. They went to the doctor with us. They asked so many questions. They supported us. They, you know, comforted us so much. So I'm so grateful to them, to my and then now I have grandchildren, so I'm grateful that I have them because they bring so much joy into our lives. And I want to tell everybody that if you believe in Konkokyo, or you know, you have a belief, you can be saved too. You know, you can be helped. And even though you have hardships, it'll help you. But you have to do your part too. But it does help you. So thank you so much. That's my commercial for. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Koichi Sensei.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else you want to add?
Oh, I was gonna say about, you know, my parents. They had so much sense of humor.
Yes.
You know, and that helped them too. You know, when my dad was 90 years old or 89 years old,
yes,
you know, Mrs. Shimai was helping him take a bath. And then she told him, Oi-san, asoko arai nasai, you know, told him to wash himself down there in his privates. And you know what my dad said? And he said, oh, asoko mada arun desu ka? He told her, you know, because he's old already, right? And we all laughed. He said, oh, asoko telephone sen nara, he cannot know, he doesn't know if it's there, you know. But he was 89 or 90, but he could, you know, he had a sense of humor. Yeah, and my mom too, you know, and my brother said, okay, Wanda, why don't you spend their money, you know? So I said, okay. So I started to buy them kaki for his birthday because he likes oysters. And then I bought, I would make for them kaijiru, you know, and I would buy the hamachi and uni and all kinds of sushis and stuff. And you know what my mother said, told my dad, お父さん、私らようなったらね、始末しましょうね. She told him, because I'm spending so much money, yeah, buying them expensive things.
Oh, the same money.
Yeah, because my mother always was poor, you know, before. So even when she became rich, she would shimatsu, you know, like save, you know. Even rice, she wouldn't throw away the rice and, you know, all kind of stuff. So, yeah, so she taught me too how to be frugal. And my dad, so everybody at the pool tells me they're driving Lexus and all nice cars, and they tell me, Wanda, when are you gonna get a new car? You know, because my car is like 16 years old. But I said, well, as long as it has air conditioning and the brakes work and, you know, it runs good, I said, that's okay. Because, you know, I'm not a good driver, that's why. So, but anyway, I'm grateful to them for teaching me these values, you know, and everything. So I would have been worse, you know. So thank you. Thank you, Sensei.
Okay. Do you have any, can you pick like one teaching that helped you, or treating mediation that really helped you in your life?
I know my parents used to say one teaching that helped them in business was, I don't know if this was a teaching, but you know the one about you take one step forward, 2 steps back, but that's okay. You just keep doing that. I don't know if that's a teaching, or I don't know. I don't remember the teachings that much, but per se, you know, this is the teaching that but I just felt that my parents lived their lives, you know, and showed me the example, you know, of, and now that you told me to think about it, you know, I could just go back and evaluate and say, oh yeah, that was, you know, she did teach me these things, and, you know, taught me to be good to people, be kind to people, and you cannot act like you're so good, you know, everything is going good. And of course my brothers helped me with that, you know, because they never let me act, you know, because they would always put me down, but I still love my brothers because, you know, they weren't mean to me.
Oh. No,
they were not. But they would call me names and, you know, yell at me and stuff like that, but I never felt like they were mean. you know. But it was good they did that, because that made me stronger. You know, I don't care. And I could get along. So I got along with boys very well. And then John told me, because they were always, you know, teasing me, and, you know, because I was little, yeah.
I see.
I told you, they said they found me at the zoo. You know, because I was younger. And said, oh, Wanda, we found you at the zoo, you know, one day. Otosan said, oh, kawaii Sona, let's bring her home. So that's how I came to live with them, they told me. And they're older, and I'm young, so I look at them. They don't look like me. You know, so I said, oh, okay, maybe. You know, I don't know. But I mean, they told me all these, you know, they used to hiakasu, or tell, you know, make fun of me. But I liked them. It was fun to live with them, you know. So, and John told me that's why he felt so comfortable with me, because I'm used to boys, and he only had a brother.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so he said, yeah, that's what he liked about me, because he could feel comfortable, you know, and I liked him. So.
Yeah, how many years? The 50?
53 years.
Wow.
Yeah, we've been married. But actually, we knew each other longer, because we were 16 years old when we first met. But we didn't go together, because he was at McKinley High School. Sometimes he would ask me to go to a dance or something. And I would ask him sometimes, but he didn't drive too. He was a senior. And then we saw each other again when we were seniors in college, you know. And until then, we're just going our own way. Then senior year, all of a sudden, we got back together. And then, you know, you get more serious, yeah? And he told me, oh, we have to get married, you know. I said, oh, how come? Because he's going to be drafted. You know, it was the Vietnam War, because he graduated from college. And so he said, I want you to come with me if I have to go to the mainland, he told me. So I said, okay. So we decided to get married, but, you know, Kami-sama helped us too, because he went for the physical test, and the doctor said, you got anything wrong with you? You know, told my husband, do you have anything wrong with you? And he said, well, I got this rash on my hand, because he passed the test. You know, he's supposed to be drafted. And he said, I got this rash on my hand from student teaching, but he never has that rash anymore. The doctor said, oh, you're lucky, you're 1Y, you cannot hold the rifle. You know, if your hand have all this rash. So he said, only if we need you, we're gonna call you, but most time you're not gonna be called. Because this was almost toward the end of the Vietnam War.
Oh, I see.
So we were really, like, Kami-sama helped us. And so we got married anyway, you know. But that was another gift. You know, you know, when you think back, you think, oh, you're so lucky, you know, but you don't know why. And yeah, and I was worried too, because I'm the youngest and he's the oldest. I was thinking, oh, after I take care of my mother, that was 14 years. My mother died in 99. And then I looked to Kaimuki, got my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, but they were 88 and my father-in-law was 96, so I have to take care of them. You know, I thought, how am I going to do that? But somehow, you know, my mother-in-law didn't live long. So she really helped me in a way. You know, I mean, it was sad. I didn't think she would die so fast, you know, because she was such a strong lady. I told my mother-in-law, Mom, you know what? When I'm 100 and you're 120, can you take care of me? I told her that because I thought she was going to live forever, yeah? And she said, okay, I take care. You know, we're joking. And I didn't think she was going to die that fast. And she died at 88. So I only took care of her for like 1 year, you know, 1 month. I went with her to her doctors. And then my father-in-law was able to come live with us, but only for 7 months, you know. But he was fun to live with too, so it was okay. You know, it was nothing to me because I took care of them for 14 years, you know, my parents. So anyway, thank you so much. Kami-sama.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay.
Okay. Hi. Tell your daughters.
And Kami-sama also blessed me with the 2 best daughter-in-laws. And you know, because they were so helpful. Like my oldest daughter-in-law, when my father died, she did all the laundry and she had all the sheets hanging up, and she cooked breakfast for 23 people, and she was only in her 20s and she did this. And not only that, she was such a terrific person in school and at the university, like that, you know, she got these awards. I'm so grateful to her. And my other daughter-in-law is also the chojo, you know, the oldest daughter. And she takes care of my mother-in-law's house better than I could, you know. And my mother-in-law was such a kichomena person who liked to have everything so. And my daughter-in-law is doing that. And the children are so cute and, you know, everything. So whenever I see my two boys, teachers, they're elementary school teachers, they were so naughty, my two boys. They say, how are they doing now? I said, oh, they're doing great because they have good wives. You know, I say that. So that was Kami-sama's blessing to us. So thank you so much. Okay.